you had a bit of coffee, so you can keep your mind sharp for the final two sessions of today. I will keep the introductions to a minimum, but I think in the next panel what we will do is pick up from where Commissioner Gabriel left off, and we'll continue the conversation about young research talent. And for that, I'll invite Maryline back to stage to introduce her panel.
Well, actually, I'll straight on invite the speakers to come on stage. In the program, you've seen that there were 4 speakers. We've lost one en route just because she's sick. So Katrīna from Lithuania is not joining us. But you've seen my colleague have been very reactive, so we've adjusted the slide here. Welcome to the 3 of you. I will introduce you straight away. So we have the pleasure to welcome, I'll sit here. To welcome Martin Andler. You're the president of the Initiative for Science in Europe, and you're also a supporter of this conference and of our widening initiative. So thank you for that, Martin. Next to you, Katrīna Sproģe. Do you want to say your name?
Yeah, hi, my name is Katrīna. The surname-wise, it's Sproģe, but Latvian pronunciation is a rather difficult one, so it's fine.
So the first panelist was from Lithuania, and if you look in the program, I mean, the challenge of pronouncing our entire name was something, not a small challenge. So thank you for correcting. And you're the voice of the students here. You're our vice president of the European Students' Union. Thank you for joining us. And next to you, Yevheniia Polishchuk. You're from Ukraine, and you're the Vice Head for International Relations at the Young Scientists Council at the Ministry of Education and Science in Ukraine. So thank you very much for joining us, to the 3 of you. As Florin hinted, let's just start with and pick up something that Commissioner Gabriel said earlier, okay? I think it's a good way to start because it's actually a new thing. She mentioned the need for a European partnership to help the career of young researchers. How does that resonate with you? Is it, how needed is it? Martin, do you want to start?
Yes, well, I think it's a very important statement that she made. We, Initiative for Science in Europe, in conjunction with Scientia Viva, and we published in September a manifesto for young researchers calling for an initiative for young researchers. So the starting point was the COVID crisis, which has impacted young early career researchers in ways which are clearly, but we don't have statistics yet. But we know also that the situation of young early career researchers is very problematic for a number of reasons: precarity, salaries, unhealthy working conditions. I mean, you name it. It's a very, very problematic situation, which is certainly driving people away from careers in research, away from. So the situation of early career researchers, young researchers in Eastern Europe is extremely important in its own right, but it's also part of a wider problem which has to be addressed. So certainly what the Commissioner Gabriel said is extremely important. We welcome this very much.
Yevheniia, maybe I come to you next because you're representing a council of young researchers. So what's your view on the need for a European partnership, and to what extent should Ukraine be involved?
Yeah. Thank you very much for the invitation, and I'm very happy to see you and to be here with you. Actually, about these European partnerships, in order to foster and in order to bring up the early career researchers and to motivate them being as researchers, high-quality researchers, we have to create different partnerships to train them, as it was said here before, to be competitive. And it's not only about how to conduct research, it's also about their soft skills, their representations of their research, I mean their studies, and as well as our organizations is a part of Eurodoc. We are aware with these problems, I don't know, for a long time ago, and usually we are conducting different trainings and workshops in order to support early career researchers. And it's not only about financial support, it's about like mentoring and supervision support. And this is, I think this is about this European partnership in this way.
Very good. So, Katrīna, I'll come to you. You're representing the students, not the researchers. So maybe the question is less relevant to you, so I'll spin it in a slightly different way. What we want to do with this panel was really to understand what the needs are for the younger generation, the students included, the researchers as well, and why is it important to involve them in any scheme, in any policy that is being designed in Brussels or in capital cities. So in the case of the European Student Association, I think you're representing 20 million students across Europe?
Roughly 20 million in 40 countries across Europe, so spanning way beyond the European Union as well.
We've heard about brain drain, and that's a key issue, and we want here to talk about brain circulation. But before we get to the circulation, do you want just to explain what is the reason why students from the region tend to go elsewhere? What do they find? What are they looking for that they don't have in their home country?
This is extremely complicated question, actually, and we could probably spend the whole day discussing on why that happens. But the student, well, first it stems from the ambition to just leave the country and prove to themselves that they can be somewhere else, that they can live on their own and achieve something elsewhere. And it comes to the question of quality of education, the question whether that is very true or just presumed through the rankings is a different, of course, matter. Whether that's truly the question of it, so the prestige that they are seeing here, which is not necessarily very true, it's just how the education systems are portrayed on a European level. Then a cultural difference possibly, especially if they're going to countries that have similar cultures or similar languages where it's easier for them to move to. And then comes the possibilities of education programs that they can actually study if what they want is actually available in their home countries, whether they can do what they have been aiming for, do they have the academic freedom to do that, wouldn't they be suppressed somewhere that they are based in, and all about the social benefits, about student grants, about different work opportunities throughout the study process. It's extremely complicated case of brain drain, and we're seeing a lot, especially in Central and Eastern Europe and in the South as well, on how to retain those people there and how to get them back once they have finished. And it's a mix of very many variables right now, and how to get them back.
So the Erasmus program is probably one of the flagship initiatives that the EU has created, one of the most popular, right? So from your perspective, is Erasmus or the other mobility program fit for purpose? Is it serving or deserving the region?
Well, we're talking about credit mobilities, which is just the short term. There are multiple issues with the program as well. We have been analyzing the downsides of the program, but then again, it's the opportunity for the students to see what's happening elsewhere, to gain the knowledge and the skills they wouldn't otherwise gain at home. And it's not just there are subject-specific things that they would learn, like additional knowledge towards their degree, but it's also intercultural understanding how to work in a multicultural environment, multitude of different social skills that they're learning from there. And studies show that when returning, they are way more motivated towards their degree, towards their careers, and this especially supports the marginalized groups of students, that they gain more out of these mobility programs than their more privileged peers would. They report more often that they are more motivated. Their academic their marks are improving a lot more often than for those who have been raised up in a more privileged, probably is the best word in the situation. So yes, it does serve a purpose, but it also has different barriers that need to be overcome, which is especially financial. And we see regional disbalance also in this. It's not just generally brain drain, but also within Erasmus program, how Central Eastern Europe is not having enough students in this whole program, and we're not benefiting enough from it.
In what sense? In terms of attractiveness, in terms of welcoming students, or in terms of having actually students benefiting from the grant?
Mostly in attracting the students, but also in the amount of the financial grant, of how much it is. It's in very many cases not enough for the student to be able to go somewhere and study there merely financially and afford to be there. So they have to rely heavily on financial support from the parents, or they need to take out the loans from the partners' support. And this is why also this creates this balance as well, where we just cannot afford to use this opportunity.
Very good. Maybe I'd stick to the question of mobility program and whether it's fit for purpose. Martin, do you have any comments on that? And then we will move to Ukraine, because we have the chance to have an Ukrainian
Well,
representative.
I mean, the thing is, I'm switching away from the Erasmus thing. I mean, the mobility. There is also not enough students from the UK, from a number of advanced countries, who wish to go into these very demanding programs, especially in the STEM fields. So it's much easier for those countries to import very good students who come from Bulgaria, Romania, the Czech Republic, Ukraine, you name it. So there is an imbalance, but there is an imbalance which is caused by what you described. The students want to go to maybe more prestigious university, but also the fact that the countries in which these more prestigious universities exist are just not providing enough students. So they need the PhD students just to make their labs work, because they just need the workforce. And this is a very crucial aspect. So it also means that in order to make progress on the imbalance that this session is mostly about, we also need to find ways of attracting more students from these rich countries, Western, Northwestern Europe countries, into those very demanding fields. And this poses a number of questions of how well these students are paid when they do PhDs and things like that.
Okay, Yevheniia, can I come to you? You are based in Krakow, right?
Yeah.
So is it the new normal for Ukrainian researchers being based in Krakow? Yesterday evening we also had Anna, who is, I think she's based here in Prague, right?
Yeah,
and
exactly.
she's from University of Kiev.
Yeah.
So is it the new normal?
Yes, but not for all of them. Actually, if we are talking about Ukrainian scholars who are abroad and who were made to leave Ukraine in February 22, so we are talking roughly about 6,000 scholars. And this is not the majority of Ukrainian scholars, and this is even not 10% of scholars and those people who are engaged in university work. So 6,000 scholars, it's quite numerous, I would say. And if we conducted a research and we wanted to know more about the professional status of those Ukrainians who are now abroad.
How do you know about them? How do you track them?
Actually, this is a survey. We are our channels, we are social media, we are our partners. So it's really was like a challenge to get some information, but it's not because it's hard to take the contacts or something like this. This is about the length of our survey questionnaire. So it was quite long, and but it was interesting. And actually, what we revealed, according to this survey, that 30% of those who left Ukraine, they moved to Poland. And top countries of where now Ukrainian researchers are, this is first of all Poland, then Germany, then Czech Republic, Italy, and Switzerland. This is top 5, I would say. And yes, I've heard a lot today about problems in Poland, in Czech Republic, about brain drain. And of course, a lot of Ukrainian researchers left, but I think that it doesn't resolve the problem of brain drain in all these countries. So because your countries, your governments and your universities want to fill these gaps with a high quality of researchers, and they prefer to employ people with the high ranks and with the good records in their CVs and with their research achievements. And the situation is the next. If the European universities are not open to all the Ukrainian researchers, they are open to high quality researchers, I would say. So, and this 6,000 is not high quality. Yes, so there are different people with different records. And if we are talking about young researchers, this is in our survey took part more than 40% of early career researchers. This is people till 35 years old due to Ukrainian legislation of definition of early career researchers. And actually what are the problems and what is the normality today, and the friend of mine can also confirm this, that this is like forced mobility. It's not like a desire to improve my career and so on. This is a question of safety. And usually in 35%, usually these are women with children. And with children, not only one child, 2, 3 children, and suddenly they became single mothers. This is one more problem for Ukrainian scholars and researchers. And this is not only about the war, this is also about family relationship and how to support them, how to prolong them on the distance. So that's why this is also a problem. Maybe you are interested in what kind of researchers are fleeing in Europe. So due to our research, this is biologists, economists, and medicine. So it means that medicine and biologists, they are more required. Yes? I don't know why economists, but maybe, who knows, maybe this survey also was thrown in some groups of economists, so that's why. But we know, all of us, we know this study bias. And 40% of those, they continue to work remotely with their home institutions. Why? Because, first of all, they have to support own institutions, because we have students, students try to learn remotely. Distance learning is very viable now. And even now, when our colleagues from Ukrainian universities, they have a huge problems with electricity cut down. And we have to support them in this way. Sometimes we conduct classes for our students instead of those people. And this is a different situation because, for example, 1/3 of students can't join the classes because of electricity cut down, so this is also the problem. And maybe it's about, I would like to tell more about the obstacles for joining different programs for Ukrainians. And I would split them into some professional skills problems and also to, mental health problem, because professional skills is about not good language, not enough knowledge about programs, short deadlines, and other reasons. So, and you know it, I think it's mostly common for all of us. But emotionally, it's hard to find some forces and energy to apply for this, in this normality, as you say. And about plans. Why I told you that it can't help you to resolve the problem of brain drains in those countries that where our scholars are now. Because in 35% they plan, if the war won't stop, for example, till the end of the year, they plan move to other countries, to third countries. And usually this is like USA, Germany, and so on. So this is
35% are not
35.
planning to come back.
35% they are not planning to stay in host countries they are now.
But they are not planning to go back to
About coming back, was another question.
Okay.
And actually, this is quite relatively to that statistics that United Nations also gives us. And 20% they usually stay at host countries. This is in general. For Ukrainian scholars, it's about 30%, 30%. So, but we believe that other 70%, they return back to Ukraine, they bring a part of research European culture to Ukraine, and they will also contribute in recovery of Ukrainian economy and Ukrainian research and development system.
All right, we'll talk about the recovery in just a minute. I want to ask, well, so you have 6,000 scholars, and that's a question for all. In this case, you have 6,000 scholars that are outside of Ukraine. But talking of all the countries that have students and researchers outside of their home country, how can the country or the research and innovation organization capitalize on the scientific diaspora that they have around the world or around Europe?
Well, historically, you see that in many countries which were for some reasons falling behind in terms of research, the diaspora played a huge role in bringing it back to, I mean, for instance, one example that comes to mind is China. China suffered immensely during the Cultural Revolution, and the diaspora in the US in particular played a big role after '79 to bring back China. And now we know that China has emerged to be a superpower in science. So certainly this should play a role. The thing is, the question of scholars going back to their countries should be thought in a slightly more complicated way. For instance, one sees that in many cases people don't come back immediately after their PhD or postdoc, but maybe 10 or 20 years later for a number of reasons. They're older, they want to be close to their parents, whatever, or they feel that they're senior enough that they can take responsibilities in their home countries. So one should not focus too much on the question of whether people come back immediately. And the second thing is that we see that people, even if they don't come back, will play a role, a bridging role between their host country and their original country, and help their original country to develop scientifically. So I think we should take a sort of slightly broader perspective on this question.
And looking at a longer timeline.
Yeah.
Right? Ladies, do you have a view on the diaspora? And then I'll take questions. If you have questions, just don't hesitate. Go ahead.
Well, maybe to build up a bit on what you already said, like this bridging opportunity, it's also about how you bring the knowledge back and then build the cooperations with the countries, and this can feed into minimizing the effects of brain drain and promote the brain circulation, especially if that happens between the countries that suffer more from brain drain and those who are being the receiving countries. And even though if those could be, for example, joint programs where you send students both ways and you gain the knowledge and you bring it back, and then these can be the people that can support that and can create the contacts. Although when we are working mostly on European level, what we are seeing and what we actually discussed earlier this week is the lack of data on how many people actually are somewhere abroad, especially when they go for degree mobilities and they're basically gone from the system. And how do you track how many are there and what is the capital that you can build on? For short-term mobility, sure, they're still in the sending countries system, the education ministry or science ministry, however they're called in the systems, they still track that information. But when someone leaves the country, most often for good, how do you still understand and know what they do? And this is probably where the graduate tracking can come in and see where they're left now.
Yeah, if I may.
Yeah.
Well, actually, the question of diaspora, science diaspora, it's important for Ukrainians now, because these 6,000, they are representatives of this Ukrainian diaspora. And we, the Young Scientist Scholar, we launched the initiative which is related to Ukrainian science diaspora, and we are trying to collect the information about those scientists who are now abroad. We don't know exactly where they are. And we also conducted several consultations with people who have the same problem. And for example, we appreciate for those people from Iraq, from Tunisia, they consulted us, and because Russian war in Ukraine is not the first and not the last war, unfortunately, in the world. So therefore, they shared with experience, and it really works. And now I also would like to ask you to share the information about this Ukrainian science diaspora, because we understand that you have relationships with universities who involved Ukrainian people, researchers to their projects, because as also from this survey that we conducted, we can see that a lot of Ukrainian scholars, they are engaged as visited professors, as researchers who joined to ongoing projects, and also this is researchers who applied for some different programs. And it's really for us important to understand who these people are, where they are, and how they contribute. And actually, in general, our vision how they contribute, and this was actually it was born during the conversation with colleagues from Belgium, and they said that science diaspora will help you to build credibility between your universities and European universities. So that's why it's very important for us. And what we also wanted to mention, that science diaspora, this is also to access to network. And this is very valuable for Ukrainian scholars now.
Yeah, and we heard about the importance of international networks, including from the Vice Rector of Charles University and from Lucas this morning. Do we have any questions from the room or from the online audience? Yes, Monica.
Yeah, I have a question. Are you in contact with ministries from European member states who have put in place programs to help Ukrainian researchers so that you can get the information you're looking for?
To get information, it's not a problem now, and there is a lot, really is not a lot of sources of information. And actually, today I was talking with a colleague, and he told me about some initiatives for national contacts and so on. So, and again, he called the name of that sources that is new for me, actually, personally for me. But actually, our ministry is in contact to all ministries, and we and our ministry, and we as well, because we are advisory body at the ministry. So we share all the information which our ministry get from other ministries. So we are in contact. Thanks.
I want to move on to a different topic that is, I'll come back to you if you have further questions, but I want to ask you whether you think that students and researchers, well, those young talents, as we call them in the title of this session, do you feel that they are sufficiently embedded locally in the ecosystem, and whether there are sufficient interactions between student bodies and researchers as association, or just themselves individually, with companies, with governments or local authorities? What is your view on that?
I don't know. I don't see this as a, particularly, I mean, if a student is engaged in, as say, at the level of master students or of master's level or PhD, they are starting to have connections with their advisor, with their labs.
Do you think it can give them better career prospects?
Well, then there are two issues. There is the issue, the general issue that we discussed, that's this Maria Gabriel initiative, that there is a general issue for early career researchers everywhere in Europe and probably everywhere in the world. And then there is a specific issue, which is the Eastern, and this is part of the general discussion that we've had. I think that the widening participation agenda, whatever one wants to call it, is a completely crucial issue for Europe, for the future of Europe, and that we have to address it, and we have to address it with strong initiatives. And I think that what exists is not going to be sufficient to act fast enough to improve the situation. So I think we need to do more than what exists in terms of cohesion, in terms of the widening participation part of Horizon Europe. I think it's more important. We have a task force at ISE because about widening participation that is coordinated by Enrique Sanchez, who was here yesterday, and because we think that it's a completely crucial issue, and we cannot escape that.
What do you think, Katrīna?
I think that varies very much across different countries, across different institutions. I think I've been lucky enough to come from a university that does a lot to put people in touch with industry as well. But then again, that's a technical university, and maybe that's more in the portfolio of the university to do that. But generally, no, it's more about it, especially in this region. It's more about the family ties and what could keep them here, and it's the family, it's the friends, it's the social circles that are there, that this emotional tie that is probably more relevant, and then the career prospects. It's a difficult decision to decide to leave, and mostly that is financially oriented, whether they can utilize their skills to receive more for something that they do, and not go into, well, there is this term brain waste when skilled researchers and skilled professionals do work that is below their skill level.
Yeah.
And that is also not a situation anyone wants to be in, and if they can do that somewhere else, then they do that somewhere else, if there is not enough spaces to do that in their home country.
All right. Yevheniia, you spoke about the recovery of Ukraine. Do you see, how important are these linkages with the other type of organization, between researchers and them for Ukraine moving forward?
Well, actually, I think that there is a lot of ways how to contribute by researchers to recovery. And first of all, if we are talking about these connections with, for example, private sector, local authorities, and there's a lot of ways, but actually we have to prepare, our government had to prepare the infrastructure and the environment for this cooperation, for this effective cooperation. And actually, what now we have, for example, before the war, let's say before the war. Before the war, the situation was the next. If we are talking about individual level, for example, one SME want to conduct or develop some activities and with the researcher, they just employ this researcher on a half position or something like this, and this is without any problems. Then we are talking about collaboration with the universities. This is a part of bureaucracy, and business, they don't want to cooperate with them because of these programs and because of credibility. And actually, then we are talking, for example, about SMEs' involvement in Horizon projects for Ukrainian SMEs. Really, sometimes it's difficult not to apply, but to understand why it's not more easy just to invest their money, yes, and it's just more simply. And if we have to also to change the mind of our private sector on this. So, and what the next is also the task for our government is to define the priorities of economy development. And actually, if we are talking only about Ukrainian recovery, and the budget for the next year is already known, and 90% of money will be covered defense needs. So 10% for everything else, but what is the share of science, yes, for research? And that's why we also rely on these European partnerships and this Horizon Europe program, because we understand that these funds can also contribute to our countries. This is like international assistance. This is not only salaries for researchers. This is money flows to individuals, to economies, and these individuals will spend this money in Ukraine, and this will arise a business. So, and of course, taxes and so on. So it's very good for economy in general.
All right. Well, and we know that defense funds and crisis in general can accelerate also innovation and technology.
Yeah. We also hope for this.
All right. Do we have more questions here? I give you the priority. Otherwise, we have one online. And yeah, the one online it's a little bit similar to the question I asked about Erasmus earlier. Here it's specifically about Marie Curie, whether Marie Curie helps with mobility of young scholars, or if it encourages more brain drain. Do you have any view on that?
Well, actually, it's not just Marie Curie; it's also Fulbright.
Fulbrights,
and
as
I think it's an important point, because Fulbright is the U.S., and the U.S. is probably the country which is most dependent on importing qualified workforce. So I think the U.S. is creating on its own a huge imbalance, and which is problematic. And they do this in the name of freedom of circulation and the advancement of science, but they're missing a point, which is that they're depriving lots of countries from their scientific elite, and that's a real issue. Of course, rich countries in Europe are trying to play the same game with Eastern and Southeastern Europe, I mean, including my own France. I'm here as a European, but we clearly are interested in importing smart students from Ukraine, from Bulgaria, from Romania, and actually I've been part of some programs which have done that. So yes, there's an issue. The question is, and probably for those students, it was probably interesting to come and study in France, in the UK, in Germany, in Switzerland. The question is, how do we bring programs to get them back? And I think that there are some ideas. I think there are not enough ideas. It's preoccupying what Andrei Fiaschi told us, that some of the programs that exist at the ERC were there were not enough applicants, so these things are not working well enough. We have to find ways of bringing people when they're 25, 30, 35, 40, bringing them back to their countries so that they have appropriate working conditions so they can still work as scientists or possibly in innovation in their own country. And I think we need to develop such programs, whether they're developed at EU level or in bilateral forms, which is also an option.
Well, it's actually the last question I wanted to ask you. How much can the EU realistically achieve in terms of shifting from brain drain to brain circulation? And if it's not the EU that is going to bring the solution, who can?
Well, in my country, the best solution for stop brain drain, this is 3 points. I mean, the first one, this is safety. And let's remember this pyramid of Maslow. Yes, and the basic is physical needs, then safety. So safety, salary, prestigious of work, and infrastructure. Because salary, money doesn't resolve any problems without tools, without infrastructure. So we don't attract other people as well.
Katrīna.
Yeah, I mean, earlier today when Commissioner Gabriel was talking about different solutions that already exist, there are tools already on EU level, but they will not work unless the countries are ready to invest in that and build on different solutions that are needed to get the people back or to keep them in the countries. So it's a matter of what the national governments or on a regional level cooperation is going to be done that will foster the brain circulation instead of just being a brain drain. Yeah, I mean, sure, the money is definitely very necessary and very much needed, but without the ideas and the initiative to do something to motivate the students and the researchers and professionals to stay there or to migrate back, it's just, the money is not going to be enough for that.
The money or the infrastructures, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there a cultural mindset that needs to be changed?
In our case, yes, because the prestigious of profession of scientist is not so high in Ukraine, so therefore we have to invest in this as well.
Katrīna, do you have a view?
Well,
I mean, how far do you go in families, for instance, or when we're talking about students? When we were talking, when we were preparing for today, you told me about the first generation students.
I think the first generation students are also a very different story on how to make sure that they actually...
Maybe remind what the first generation student is.
Yeah, the first generation students are those whose parents don't have higher education. They are usually the first ones in the family to even get to university or to college. And they are more prone to dropouts. They generally have grown up with the mindset that higher education is just not for them. They're not worthy of it. And I know that Sweden is doing a lot in this matter. They are tracking on how the first generation is performing in education generally, and this is the young talent that is very likely not to even become a talent because they are not prone to study more, and that is a cultural and systemic change that needs to be embedded in from very early stages of education. That is, we're talking about primary school, where they need to be given this understanding that education can get them further in life, that can serve as a social mobility tool, where they can move across classes within the society and improve their life and by that doing also the society at large. But yes, cultural and systemic change comes differently. I've been following different national reforms in my home country, in Latvia, and that doesn't come easily. There are a lot of fights. I'm sure that's everywhere between the policy makers, between decision makers and the stakeholders, social partners, And that needs to happen together, and it cannot happen without involving that the group that is going to be affected the most. In this case, either the student or the researcher. Either those are the umbrella organizations or those are directly the people that are going to be influenced. And yes, that comes with the systemic change on what needs to be done to make sure that the system functions.
Good. Martin, last question for you. And we have 1 minute to wrap
Well,
up.
we've seen, I mean, the whole discussion this morning was focused on the cultural difficulties, and I think that they exist at two levels. They exist at the level of the academic communities, and they exist at the level of the political environment. Governments in those countries, actually in lots of other countries, don't give enough money for science, for research and stuff like that. So we need to definitely act on these two things. But certainly, also, I mean, about the imbalance, certainly the EU can do something, and it should do things, and I hope that in the next framework program, the widening agenda will be widened and will have will show a bigger priority, because I think it's completely crucial, especially if you think that the widening countries are going to be extended with a number of countries, including Ukraine, which are going to be closer, maybe not members, but closer to the European Union. And so I think that we need to act on those levels and not just say, well, it's the fault of Latvia or it's the fault of Ukraine because they don't do things right, because I think it's much more complicated, and we have to include the fact that the rich countries benefit from this brain drain, and if they benefit, they have to give back in some way.
That would be the word of the end. I think we've reached the end of the session. So I want to thank the three of you very much. Please give them a round of applause. Thank you. Yevheniia.
Yeah, maybe the last word is
You're standing
about,
between the coffee
this
break.
Is about our huge thank you, Ukrainian thank you for all of you for your support. Because for us it's not only like a place where we can sit during the war. This is the acceptance. This is the help to survive in this situation, and this is encourage, and this is an opportunity to function in normal way during this normal situation. Thanks a lot for you.
Thank you. All right. Lauren, back to you.